Three, two, one, go.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Triad of the Forest podcast, a podcast from Puerto Rican friends coming together to do deep dives into Star Wars and other nerd-related media. This is season 4, episode 2, and today we are taking a little break from Star Wars. We will talk a little bit about it, but mostly today is an Indiana Jones episode. We've been talking about it, that we were going to do this. We're super excited, and joining us for this awesome conversation is Alex Damon from Star Wars Explained.
Oh, today
Welcome
it's
back to the
Indiana
Triad.
Jones Explained. Indiana Jones Explained.
I do that sometimes. Yeah, I do that.
Well, welcome back. Thank you so much for coming.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about Indy. I don't think I've ever had the chance to talk about Indiana Jones on a podcast.
It's so interesting because it's a Lucasfilm property. It's one of the biggest properties in the world, but somehow everyone not ignores it. I don't want to say ignores it because obviously it's a big deal. Everyone's excited for Dial of Destiny, but it doesn't. I don't think that the podcasting community gives it the love that it deserves. And we're here to rectify that. Willow got much deserved love. But Indiana Jones needs that too, and we're very, very, very excited to talk to you about it because we know you're also a big Indiana Jones fan, and we decided to split this into a duology of sorts, and pit the to make it a little controversial, I guess, the Nazi duology and then the everything else duology. So today we will be talking about Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade. So this is going to be the boring episode, so to speak. And then
People
later...
agree that these ones are good.
Everyone agrees these are the good ones. And then later on, we'll talk about Temple of Doom and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And then we'll see what happens there. So I'm excited for that one even more than this one, because this one's going to be like, it's good.
Great movies.
Good. Yeah. It's good. We punched a Nazi, and everyone's happy. But before we get into that, this wouldn't be a Star Wars podcast if we didn't talk a little bit about Star Wars. On Variety or The Hollywood Reporter, it was announced, revealed, reported that Disney is looking to reduce Marvel content and increase Star Wars content, which I found interesting because I've always been an advocate of restraint on the Star Wars front. So I just wanted to talk about that, and especially with Celebration on the way and the news as well that they're gonna be revealing some Star Wars films that are coming down the pipeline. I wanted to get your thoughts on that, Alex, before we kind of get going. What are your thoughts on increasing Star Wars content? Because I know as a content creator right now, and next week I'm a little stressed out. So how do you feel about increasing the amount of stress that it's going to put upon us as a fandom community?
That's always kind of like the secondary thing. My first reaction is always excitement. Right now, I don't think we're at a point where there's saturation or oversaturation. I'm sure some people would disagree with me, but and obviously we're also very biased. We're like, yeah, give me more Star Wars, whereas the more casual fan might be like, there's too much. So I look at it when I look at the MCU, I'm a far more casual fan there, and I really enjoy watching all the stuff, but I have been kind of like, there's a little too much right now for me after Endgame, getting into phase 4 with all of the shows and still 3 movies a year. It has been a lot. I just watched Black Panther on Disney Plus, and I'm kind of considering doing the same thing with Ant-Man, where I'm just like,
just wait for it to be released on Disney Plus.
Yeah, I already feel busy enough with Star Wars, and so Marvel, I'm like, I'll probably just wait. Anything on Disney Plus, it's easy to watch from the couch. So I have been keeping up with the shows and everything, but it has felt like there's a little too much for the casual fan in me. Whereas Star Wars, it's 3 live action shows, which is still quite a bit, but I think it's not too much for just the casual fan who only watches live action. I think that there's room for more, even if it's not more Disney Plus series, but just, hey, we're going to do a movie again.
Yes. It's interesting because even with publishing, I think that there's still a lot in publishing. There's a lot of the books, especially with High Republic, which we stand up in this house. But it feels weird, like how, well, not weird, different, how I feel like the publishing efforts pre Disney, Lucasfilm acquisition happened, where it was more serialized. We had like the New Jedi Order, right, which was like a series of 30,000 books that came out, like I don't know how across how many years, and now everything's kind of a little more contained. So it feels like there is a lot, but everything's like in small bursts. So I think that makes things a little more palatable to an extent. And some of the shows, especially with like Book of Boba Fett, it's just like, it seems like it's kind of alternating. It seems like Mandalorian's kind of that anchor that's always consistent across the year. So it might not be too bad. Maybe, I don't know. I've always thought that Star Wars thrives when there's less of it, especially in the film department. Maybe, I mean, TV shows is fine because I'm engaged with everything. Nani, what do you think? You've been quiet on this one.
Yeah, I do think that, just give me more Star Wars. I love Star Wars. I'm so happy to get so much Star Wars, especially when we weren't getting any when I was a kid until the prequels came out, and then that huge gap that I never thought the sequels were ever going to happen. And I never got into the Clone Wars animated until we started doing the podcast, which obviously mistakes were made because it's fantastic. But I love it. I love talking about Star Wars. It's so good. When they were doing the films too close to each other, I think they were rushing it a little bit. But now that we haven't had a film in so long, and some of the shows they're coming up with have been so good. So I think
very true.
Just feed me more Star Wars. I'm happy.
Feed me. But space it out. I don't like this. Oh, the thing is, Alex, I don't know if you heard our last episode. We had like this wild theory of why they're gonna overlap Bad Batch and Mandalorian, because like last episode, there was some rando that stole the Marauder.
Right.
So, and that was a person in a mask. And like all of a sudden we were like, Din Djarin. That's Din Djarin. He's wearing a mask, and it's going to come out. And the last episode was to be continued. The reveal's going to happen with the premiere of Mandalorian at the same time. It's going to be synergy. It's going to be epic. We're absolutely wrong.
Yeah.
We're probably wrong. We're absolutely wrong. But if that happens, I'll jump out of the window in excitement, which is counterintuitive. However, another reporting said that then Star Wars Celebration is going to have some reveals about finally movies, which makes sense, right? But I'm interested to know your opinions on what you think those movies are going to be. Do you think it's going to be a continuation of the Skywalker saga, even though they said that that's, done and buried? If it's going to be a new trilogy, do you think it's only going to be standalone things? What do you think that the possibility of like these films are going to be at Celebration?
First, I'm keeping my expectations in check, and since it's the Hollywood Reporter, and I mean they're a reputable source, but it just said like our insider says X, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to believe it until someone says something on stage,
right?
And even then, the way Star Wars movie news has been recently, I'm like, okay, don't just walk someone out and be like, they're doing a Star Wars movie. Right. Like, yeah, I really want details like you're suggesting. At this point, I don't care what they are. I would just love to hear, like, this is concretely what the next Star Wars movie is going to be about, who's in it, who's directing it.
Actual confirmation.
Right. I mean, I have what I would want, which I'm still really hoping Rogue Squadron gets made someday. Personally, if they were to do something new and big, I would want them to go far away from the Skywalker saga, do something in the Old Republic, High Republic. But if they come out and say, I don't want it to be episode 10, but if they were like, we are going to continue the story of the new Jedi Order and the new Republic and explore what
that would be like. That would be the best name, honestly. The new. And everyone's just referring to it like, what's up? Where are you going? Well, I'm going to the new. That's it. Not even the new Republic. It's just the new.
Just new.
And everyone gets confused because is it the new Jedi Order or is it the new Republic? And that would be great. That would be dope. I am an advocate that we're gonna get 10, but it's gonna be 10 years after Rise of Skywalker. So, because that's what that's what happened with Episode 7. It was 10 years after Revenge of the Sith. So it's gonna happen.
It's interesting, happen. Like Lucas's original plan, which he kind of waffles on how he tells the story, but he did say he had 12 films in mind way back then. but I'm still just like, they said this Rise of Skywalker is the end of the Skywalker saga, so I'm like, continue the story, but just don't call it episode 10. That's how I feel.
Interesting. That's an interesting point. Although with the Lucas thing, I think he's the most unreliable narrator in the history of things, because you can find any interview where he's contradicting himself. So, yeah. But anyway, that's Star Wars. Star Wars is boring. Let's talk about Indiana Jones,
Indy.
which is a far more exciting franchise. It's, you know, if adventure has a name, it's Indiana Jones. And, you know, another place where Harrison Ford stole our hearts. He was a replicant. He was a scoundrel, and now he's an archaeologist and an academic. So one that shoots people, which is something I never knew archaeologists did. I know one of the reasons we invited is obviously you do the spin-off on your show of Star Wars Explained into Indiana Jones Explained. You're a big fan of Indiana Jones, as are we. How did you get into Indiana Jones? Because I think everyone's story for that is actually probably different, because one, I don't know what anyone's story for Indiana Jones is. So like, let's do it. Like, how did you get into it? Because obviously, I mean, you know, it wasn't in theaters when we were, you know, know, strapping young lads. So what's going on there? How did you get into the world of Indy?
It's probably, honestly, I don't fully remember. It's not like my Star Wars story where I vividly remember why we went home and watched Star Wars. I think it was probably just on one day, and my parents were like, "Oh, you'll probably like this." I know I was too young to see it, because I do remember being scarred by the final scenes. But
yeah, oh yeah.
But I still loved it, just the adventure, the excitement. So it just feels like Indy was always something that I was aware of. And then the more I kept watching it as I grew older, I was like, God, this really is a perfect movie. It just, it's so good. It's paced perfectly. I love it so much.
Did you watch it like in theaters though? Was it like one of those home viewing type of experiences?
Oh yeah, it was just like on TBS or something. I have seen Raiders in a theater, I think twice. But
jelly. I guess I have not. Nani, how about you? What was your Indy experience? Because I don't think, I've known you for a very, very, very long time. I don't think we've ever talked about Indiana Jones.
Out about it. Yeah. It was something that was always around. So I remember my Star Wars story because my parents weren't fans of Star Wars, so I wasn't exposed to it through them, but my mom was a big Indiana Jones fan. I mean, I remember when Kingdom of the Crystal Skull came out, we went to the theaters with my mom to watch it because she loves Harrison Ford and Indiana Jones, and I just kind of remember always having it around.
What woman, what person does not love Harrison Ford?
I know. But I remember back when we were kids in Puerto Rico, we didn't have a lot of channels on TV. So I remember renting it from Blockbuster, and all the time when we would go and somebody would suggest getting an Indiana Jones film. But I remember that I didn't know how it ended for the longest time. It was one of those movies that my mom would like fast forward the ending so we wouldn't know that scene happened. So like for years I didn't know there was sex and Dirty Dancing or like stuff like that.
I'm surprised that your mom would do that. Because as an aside, everyone, Nani's mom is the mom that had the house that we would all go to so that we could do the things that we weren't allowed to do at our own homes. So the fact that she was actually censoring films is surprising, because your mom was
maybe it was my dad's idea.
Your mom was the liberal mom. Let's put it that way.
Maybe it was my dad's idea when I was a kid. I can't remember, but I remember when I finally watched the end, I was still pretty young and it did scar me for life. I was like, this is how this movie ends. Oh my God, melting faces and ghosts. And yeah, so I just kind of remember always having it around. I do remember The Last Crusade more than I did the other ones. I don't know. I think it was my favorite growing up, so I kind of remember watching that one more. And then as I grew up, I started loving Raiders as well. And you know, the other ones are controversial, but I still enjoy them.
We'll get to not today.
We'll get to those.
Not today. Not today. You know, I had a similar experience, right? Like I obviously couldn't go to see Raiders when it came out. So it was USA or TNT. I don't know which cable channel it was, but it was ubiquitous in the sense that Back to the Future was also ubiquitous. It was one of those films that was like consistently on a weekend. Yeah. It's like it's Back to the Future or Indiana Jones. So like I always remember like exactly. I don't know when's the first time I saw Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
I just know that it was there and it was perennial, and it's like it's a constant in life. In the same way that Back to the Future 1 and 3 were, because I am an anti Back to the Future 2. Same way as I am an anti Temple of Doom, but we'll get to that. So same thing. Like, I don't know if I'm pretty sure I saw Last Crusade first, because I've always been like an advocate for Last Crusade being my favorite, even though I think Raiders is the better movie, but I still prefer Last Crusade. So like I've always felt that I saw that movie first, and that's why I have more of an emotional attachment to it. But we'll get to that. That's the important thing of what we're getting at now. It's a mini ranking. Rankings are stupid, but let's do it. Alex, what's your not from the 4, because we're gonna exclude Temple and Kingdom. But what's your ranking between Raiders and Last Crusade, and why?
Raiders and then Last Crusade. There definitely was a point in my life where, kind of like Star Wars, my favorite of the franchise was whichever one I had just seen for the first time. And I was just like, yeah, there was a time in my life where Return of the Jedi was my favorite one. And then like my ranking my taste developed as I grew up, and I was like, it's still A New Hope, even though, kind of like you said, I think Empire's the better movie, but A New Hope just hits me. So it's really close, because there are things that I like about Last Crusade a lot, but I think Raiders is, it's what defined Indiana Jones. So I think it's just perfect.
And that's a perfect answer. Nani, how about you?
Honestly, I think it depends on the day that you ask me which one, because they're really, really, really close for me. And especially because of my favorite aspects, like, Raiders has Marion, which is one of the greatest characters ever.
So that's Kingdom, though.
Yeah, I know. Of course, yeah.
Yes.
And then Sean Connery for, Last Crusade, which was so great. I remember when I was a kid, I was so confused. I was like, why is James Bond his dad? But I think I am somehow more like emotionally attached to Last Crusade. I don't know, it's the father-son bonding thing. That intro with River Phoenix is so good.
Rest in peace,
I don't know,
King.
No, but I think I am more emotionally attached to Last Crusade, even though Raiders, I think, is the better movie.
The thing with Last Crusade, like you said, it's all Sean Connery, especially because one, I'm a sucker for father-son films. Interpret what you want from that. So like those type of things just like kind of hit home a lot. Even before like I knew that was, I don't know, like a thing that I was into in movies. I was just like, I relate to that for some reason, some subconscious level. And especially with the odd pairing, right? Of like Sean Connery and Harrison Ford, which blew my mind when I was like watching one of those YouTube videos of like, I bet you didn't know this fact about Indiana Jones, which is like that Harrison Ford and Sean Connery aren't that, older from, they're basically the same age. So basically it's just like Sean Connery just looks older. And I was just like, that's insane. It blew my young mind. But to have that opposite pairing, it's just so fun. I don't know. It made everything campy, but in the best kind of way, because it's just like the odd couple type of stuff going on when like Temple of Doom and Raiders was like so serious about everything. And obviously Last Crusade's still very serious, but just having like that quirky element of Sean Connery. And then, oh my God, I forgot his name. The museum.
Marcus Brody.
Thank you. Gee, you knew exactly where I was going. And then Marcus Brody joining the adventure and also being kind of the Henry, the pen is mightier than the sword. And it's like, oh my God, that's so great. Stupid. I love it. Which obviously then ties into like my young sensibilities, right? So I think that's it's kind of like a Return of the Jedi thing. Yeah, Return of the Jedi was for kind of a younger audience to an extent than Empire was, which is kind of the same thing. Raiders is like for, I wouldn't say an older audience, but it plays it a little more mature all the way through. And maybe that's the wrong way of saying it. And then Last Crusade still it has like that oddball thing that kind of caters to the Jar Jar Binks in all of us. So Raiders of the Lost Ark. Let's get into relationships, because I think both films are defined by relationships. One is Indy and Marion, and then Last Crusade is Indy and Henry. So which one do you prefer and why? Alex, let's start with you. Do you prefer like the pairing of Marion and Indy, which can get spicy, and we'll maybe get into it. Or do you prefer the father-son thing with Henry Jones Sr. and Henry Jones Jr.?
Well, I love that every Indy movie, not just these two, but it's always about, Indy never gets the treasure that he's after, but he gets something better. He gets his relationship with Marion or his father or his son. I think that Indy and Henry Jones Sr. is the better, more moving relationship. I really like how it all ends. I remember Molly and I were at a bar a while back, and just Last Crusade was on, and I was facing it, Molly's back was to it, and she was like, why are you like getting a little misty-eyed? And I was just reading the subtitles. I was like, he just called him Indiana.
I know.
The subtitles.
You stopped calling him Junior. I love that moment.
Indiana.
Yeah, so do I.
Let it go.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so good. It's so good.
It's so good.
Oh my god, it's so good. They did it twice, and then like in the Bad Batch. Let it go.
Yeah.
Indiana. You were named after the dog. Oh my god, so good. I love that movie. It's so good. Natty, how about you? Do you prefer the Marion stuff, or do you prefer the Henry Jones Sr. stuff?
They're both good in different ways. I mean, the whole way they played out the whole relationship with Henry and Indiana, and how Indy, I love those moments when he's like so proud of himself that he pulled something off, and he looks at Henry and he's just like, why are you proud of yourself? Like, why are you smiling? And he just looks all like upset. Like, I was trying to impress you, Dad. It's so good. But then the romantic relationship with Marion is so good. I'm a sucker for romance, and they have such a, because you would expect, obviously, I've seen it so many times that I know everything that's going to happen, obviously, but you would never expect the girl in the film to be like punching him straight in the face, like the first time they reunite, and to have to be so ballsy and have this amazing attitude. And so, and they kind of soften each other a little bit because they're both pretty rough, when they're by themselves. So they both work in different ways. So I love them.
Right. Because the Marion thing is like, it's awesome because it's like, it's again, like continuing like that Leia motif from A New Hope, where it's just like, she's the damsel, but she's not the damsel in distress, even though she is in distress type of thing. Where it's like Indy comes like to save her, but she really doesn't need saving except because maybe the plot needs her to be saved to move it along. But she could have taken care of it herself. If Indy
build off of the Leia thing real quick. I bring up the soundtrack show so many times, but David W. Collins has a great episode about Raiders, and he points out that Marion's theme and Leia's theme share the first two, the same notes at the start. And I'm like, God, so good. That's so cool.
Do you think
that is so cool.
Do you think that was on purpose, or do you think it's just like a coincidence because it's John Williams, and John Williams, has a palette that he draws from?
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever know. I think
we'll get John Williams on this show. Yeah. We'll get him.
Probably a coincidence, but like subconsciously, it was not. I don't know. I don't even know if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense.
It does.
I don't think he was like, I'm gonna try to make this theme sound like Leia's. I think it just they're kind of similar characters, so that's what happened.
Karen Allen, you're the MVP. We want you back in Dial of Destiny. Small aside, are you excited for Dial of Destiny?
Oh, of course.
What are you most excited for in Dial of Destiny? Nazis, but punching Nazis again? Because I'm excited for that.
I do think that the setup is really interesting, that they're kind of building off of the space program and Operation Paperclip, and the idea that, like, to win the space race, America worked with Nazis. And like the idea that Indy would hate that is perfect. And like, and he should hate that.
I hate those guys.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Nazis. I hate those guys.
I think that's a really interesting way to bring the Nazis into the 60s and still make that part of the story. But real, like, this is for the spicier episode, but like, I'm not a Kingdom
throw
stan.
a little spice.
I'm sorry, Goose, but I don't hate Kingdom. I think it gets more hate than it deserves. But I like, it doesn't matter how many Indiana Jones movies they threw at me, and if they were all garbage, I would still be excited for the next one, because I just love that style. It's not just Indiana Jones. I enjoyed the Uncharted movie. I enjoyed the Mummy. Like anything like that.
The Tom Cruise Mummy, or the Mummy with Brendan Fraser.
The Brendan Fraser Mummy.
Oh yeah. Come on. That's everyone loves the Brendan Fraser one.
Yeah.
And we're in the Brendan Fraser Renaissance. I'm not sure how we're gonna like make that, like my connaissance. I'm not sure how we're gonna do that with Brendan Fraser to make it like one word. But yeah, we're living through that, and I think everyone agrees that the Mummy films are quintessential cinema. They're not movies; they're cinema. But the thing with Kingdom, again, we're gonna talk about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull later. But the one thing I have to say, of one of the reasons that I feel like I'm more invested in Kingdom, is because that's the only Indiana Jones movie I went to see in the movie theater. Like when that movie was announced, I'm like, holy crapola. It was kind of like the Phantom Menace, It's just like, what? Like this franchise that like that I only seen on VHS in a crappy TV is gonna be in the big screen. And then I was just like, damn, that's Indy. He's 70 years old, and there's monkeys and giant ants and stupid aliens, but I saw it on the big screen. I was part of the hype. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that. I have no idea what I was saying before that. I just got excited about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull for a minute. So Nani, you do something with this podcast right now.
I do something with this.
Do it. Yeah, do it. Yeah.
Everything about it is so iconic. Just the look and the theme, the soundtrack is so good. I haven't rewatched them in a while. I just did. And every time they're on TV, I let them run. But for some reason, I always catch them in the same scene. So I haven't seen like the entirety of them in a long time. And they really hold up. They're super fun. I was laughing like an idiot. Josvando's like, what are you doing? I'm rewatching Indiana Jones. Leave me alone. I'm having so much fun. Yeah. But yeah, just give me a good adventure story and a whip and a dude afraid of snakes, and I'm all in. It's amazing, really. Everything about it is so iconic.
True. Now I remember actually what I wanted to say in terms of like you sparked my memory. With the other thing that I do actually appreciate about Kingdom versus Temple, and we'll get to that. But you stirred me a little bit. Is that with Temple, it's it's a little problematic. I feel like in terms of like who we decide to antagonize and how and why. And at least with like Kingdom, it's just like, okay, it's the Soviets, man. We're gonna go with bad guys. We're gonna go to the thing where it's just like it's black and white. Nazis are bad, and then Kingdom's just like, well, Soviets, bad guys. Let's go. Let's punch them in the face. So that's something that I appreciate from that, and something that I'm really looking forward to. Dial of Destiny as well. It's just like, hey, you know what? People that are bigots, we're gonna punch them. We're gonna punch them in the face, like Brasso did. Brasso and Indiana Jones, they would be
best friends.
Best friends. I want to see that. That's a spin-off I want to see from Lucasfilm. It's like do a what if or whatever. I want to do like a non-canon cross franchise thing where it's just Brasso and Indiana Jones just punching fascists.
He does seem like he'd make a good Indy ally.
Yeah. I think so. It's just like Lucas.
Definitely.
Do it. Just do it. Like Shia LaBeouf, we're keeping it, in the family here. Do it. So I don't know. I'm unhinged today. Emo night unlocked me. So going back to the hingedness of Indiana Jones. I think one of the great things again, it's like that whole fight of the fascism and like good guys, which again makes things political, obviously, which I think is one of the interesting things about all media that people somehow have like an issue against. It's just like, well, I don't want my media to be political, which is what they say with Star Wars. But then it's just like, but you love Indiana Jones, and Indiana Jones is against fascism and and bigots and all these things. So it's an interesting thing, especially to see how they'll tackle it with Dial of Destiny, because I really want to see like how far Lucasfilm pushes it.
I don't think Mangold's the type of guy to care what anyone cries about online, especially seeing him in tweets, basically like antagonizing people.
I think so. I think so. I think so too. And honestly, I've noticed that from Lucasfilm as well. I've seen that they were playing it safe a little bit, like especially like during the Last Jedi days with everything that happened with kind of the whole John Boyega thing. I think that Lucasfilm, especially on social media, we're just like, okay, well, we don't want to upset fans, so we're gonna not go as hard as we could with how we're supporting some parts of the fandom. But I think now they're just like gloves off. It's like, hey man, we're gonna upset you no matter what. So we're just gonna do what's right. We're gonna do what's right, and they still could do better. Definitely, I think the Star Trek. I hate to say it, but Star Trek's doing better, like by miles, and not even by a little bit. Star Trek's doing better in terms of representation, advocacy, and allyship than Star Wars is. I mean, because Star Wars is still, I feel like, limited to. I don't know how we got to Star Wars. Never, sorry, but it's doing extremely well, like in High Republic and publishing. But I still feel like that needs to kind of jump into the mainstream and be like, hey, because it's safe, right, to like be an advocate and an ally in a not to disparage the books, but like in a medium that less people engage with,
right?
As opposed to,
I have hopes for the Acolyte. It's still a ways off, but with its star and its showrunner, I think that's a good chance that we might see more and more representation.
I hope so. Oh, and the leaks look good. I don't know if everyone's seen the leaks, but like, oh, that Wookiee, I was in. I saw that Wookiee. I'm like, okay, let's go. My body is ready. I mean, my body's ready for anything. I mean, interpret that as you will. But it was specifically for Acolyte. That's the one I'm most excited for. But Indiana Jones, Nani, take this away from me. I'm getting unhinged. Take it back to Indy.
You're getting unhinged.
It's been a week.
Yes.
Oh my God.
So Alex, so what are other things that jump out at you about Indiana Jones that you love it so much, aside from the relationships we've talked about already?
Let's see. I think the format of I don't even know if I want to call it puzzle solving, but having to find, having to find this relic, the headpiece to the Staff of Ra, and then there's clues on both sides of it. And then how long to make the rod. You go to the map, and the way they establish all of that stuff right up front in the scene with the two government agents, so that like the audience is on board the whole time. I just think that kind of thing is really, really fun. And watching him solve the riddles, and he gets one step ahead of the Nazis, and then oh no, they catch up because it established so many tropes that are still used today, like playing the Uncharted games. And it's like you do all the legwork, you solve the puzzle, you open the temple, and then they come running in right behind you, and you're like, I let them in. I let them in.
Yes. It's the MacGuffin, right? That's the term in film. But it's interesting because especially again, I don't mean to bring Star Wars back into this, but like with like Rise of Skywalker, right? There was the MacGuffin, right? And Rise of Skywalker was just the Wayfinder, which it should have been a holocron, but we're not getting into that. But it's odd because somehow in the indie films, like the MacGuffins feel so natural to the story that you're not thinking like, oh, this whole movie is just about just finding something, because that thing, I don't even know how to explain it, because in Indy, MacGuffins work. Rise of Skywalker, it didn't, because I feel like the MacGuffins in Rise of Skywalker weren't integral to the character's developments in the way that it is in the Indiana Jones films. I don't know if you had like something that like made me change my mind about MacGuffins in Rise of Skywalker.
I was going to say it's interesting that Force Awakens and The Rise of Skywalker both have these MacGuffins, but they're both like maps, like a pathway to reach a person, whether it's Luke or the Emperor, Octo or Exegol. Like it's more about finding someone instead of just like an object that, again, Indy never ever gets. We feel that it's important, but then he has to give it up at the end. Right. So it's interesting to kind of compare those.
Yeah. But with Rise, with Raiders and Last Crusade, I think the interesting thing about like that MacGuffin is that, and this is why I prefer Last Crusade, like the MacGuffin of the Holy Grail really, really furthers, I think, that relationship between Henry Jones and Indiana Jones in a way that in Raiders of, getting the Ark of the Covenant really didn't further Marion and Indy's relationship. Like, sure, at the end it's like, oh, we're getting back together, but they didn't find meaning through the MacGuffin in a way that like Sean Connery and Harrison Ford did. I don't know if you guys agree with that sentiment or not. Actors, I guess. Let's start with you. How do you feel that the MacGuffins in both movies furthered a character's development?
I totally agree with what you said. That the Henry Senior Junior relationship, like it's not just Indy having to let go of the Grail. It's also what Henry Senior has been devoted to for his entire life. Yeah,
right.
So like him telling Indiana to let it go is more important than Indy giving it up. Where in Raiders, like Marion doesn't really care about the arc. Indy is the one that cares about it, but then he does give it up, and he's like, he has that moment of, you all keep the arc, just give me Marion. But then Bellic also calls this bluff. He's like, you're not going to blow it up.
Yeah, it's history. You're not going to destroy it. Yeah.
But I agree that on their journey to get the arc, it's more just that they are thrust back together, and through circumstance, they find love again. Whereas the MacGuffin of the Grail is far more meaningful to both Indy and his father.
Nani, how about you?
Yeah, I think, and their relationship in Last Crusade is so complicated because he's kind of trying to complain to his dad that he never got any attention. It's like, I'm sitting here, what do you want to talk about? And he can't come up with anything to talk about because their relationship has been so broken for so long that he's just like, I don't know what to say.
Then what are you complaining about?
And then it's so beautiful at the end, after they lose the Grail, that he's just Henry Jones Sr. is saying that Elsa just thought that she found a prize. And when he asked him, well, what did you find? Illumination. Oh, I love it so much.
I just got chills.
So I think it's way more meaningful in that one, but it's a different Indiana Jones we get. It's a couple years afterwards, and there's character growth, and it's just they're really, really good to watch back to back. Honestly, I had so much fun watching them, but it is more meaningful there. I think in this one, because it was the entire, Henry's entire life was devoted to finding this, and it's kind of what broke them apart, because he was so obsessed with having this Grail quest that he kind of ignored his child, even though he was saying that, I made you be self-independent, but basically you were just ignoring your kid. So this is the thing that separated them, and then at the end it brings them together. So I think that's why that MacGuffin works better.
Oh my god, you just said that. I just get so many flashbacks from the movie that it's like, oh, it's so good. Last Crusade, it's just so good. Like I was thinking of that scene when like it's almost just saying like Dr. Jones, and they're both like, yes, and so they're both Dr. Jones.
Their interactions are so much fun.
It's perfect.
Like, what did you just do? I can't believe what you just did,
Junior. And the end when Salas is like, why do you keep calling him Junior?
Junior, what does this mean?
Junior. It's like Indiana was the dog, and you were named after the dog. It's just like, oh my god, it's just perfect. Then they ride off into the sunset. It's like, God, like how
the soundtrack comes in.
How
so good.
Can a movie not be better than that?
I do think like Last Crusade feels like where they really nailed the formula. Raiders was George Lucas being like, I kind of like Star Wars in the flash forward, and he's like, I really like these old adventure serials. I want to do that, but with a new character. So they just made a really fun, tightly paced, like fantastic adventure. And then I think Last Crusade, they were like, okay, but we can make the MacGuffin and the relationship work a little bit better.
Right.
Like they really honed in on what made Raiders work.
Right. That was the Hold My Beer movie. It's like, okay,
like something I think about a lot is another Spielberg movie, and Jaws. And I wish I remember who wrote this, but a long time ago I read about how what makes Jaws a special movie is the relationships and those moments of like Brody sitting with his son, and he's stressed out, but he sees his son as like mimicking everything he's doing. and it's like setting up the stakes of I have to protect my child and everyone else's child on this island. Like scenes like that make Jaws special. Then when you're doing a sequel to it, it's like, well, we'll just throw another shark in there, and like they focused on the shark,
right,
and not the relationships. Same thing could be said for like Lost World and Jurassic Park, that it's just like more dinosaurs, more deaths, more of not what made the original special.
I agree.
So this is kind of the opposite, where Last Crusade is like, yeah, still an adventure, but we're gonna nail the relationship this time.
Yeah. It's kind of like that reminded me a lot of like I think it was Patton Oswalt when he was talking about The Force Awakens. I don't know if it was with Conan O'Brien, what a late night show, and Patton Oswalt saying like, well, it's just like because like the original trilogy, everyone's having fun. You're sick, still when you're in your teens or your 20s and you're having fun, you're doing all the things, and you make something that's awesome. And then the prequel trilogy was like you're married and now you're intellectual and you're trying to make something with the midichlorians that you're trying to rationalize life. And then the sequel, and then with The Force Awakens, it's like you just got divorced and you're just having a good time. You're doing drugs again. So it's just like, let's do the things that when I was young, and that's The Force Awakens. And I feel like in a sense, that's kind of Last Crusade, because in a way, that's what happened to Spielberg and George when they were making those movies. Like they were reasonably happy when they made Raiders. Then they were divorced when they did Temple of Doom, and you can tell that both of them were not happy campers, and because that movie is dark, and we'll get to that. And then Last Crusade is like, hey man, let's go back, let's have some fun. And Last Crusade just feels, that's why I really like it, because it feels like everyone that was making that movie was having the most fun. And it's just like, let's just like, capitalize on everything that's great about everything we did the last two times, but with the fun element, instead of being like, well, let's rip someone's heart out through their chest and hope kids don't get traumatized, and no racial stereotypes. So that's always a plus in my book. So they think they've learned their lessons. I mean, I'm not sure about the aliens in Kingdom, but we'll get we'll get to that.
You need to put a counter of how many times you said
interdimensional beings. I'm sorry, interdimensional beings. I don't want to disrespect anybody here. But the puzzles, I think the puzzles were like one of the best parts, and I think Last Crusade is better in puzzles too, because when you're getting to the Holy Grail and you have the was it 3? It's the Penitent Man. What were the 3? Especially since you're the expert here.
The Name of God, the Word of God, and the Path of God.
It's so good. And especially how it's cut, right? With like, because he's doing the thing, but then it's Henry like being like guiding him, even though he can't see what he's actually doing, but he knows what he's doing.
In episode 5 of The Bad Batch, when Hunter started walking on that path, I immediately was like, but in the Latin alphabet, Jehovah starts with an I. And then Hunter immediately fell through the thing. I was like, oh my God.
Thank you.
I was thinking the exact same. Oh my God. Yes. I was thinking the exact same thing. I'm like, I was just like, it starts. Oh my God. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Because I don't feel alone now. Because I'm like, this is The Last Crusade. The best of the Indy films, mind you. Nani, what's your favorite puzzle from the Indy movies?
Oh, that one's amazing at the end. But I do think I love when he goes into the map room in Raiders, and just like the pacing of it, when he's looking for the hole where it's supposed to fit, and the fact that he has to like write everything down. It's not like super easy for him to figure things out. You actually, there's some.
He's an archaeologist.
Education behind this. Yeah. He's not just, it wasn't just for show. And that whole scene when you see like the sun coming up behind him in the map room, and then when it hits, I love that scene so much. So
especially because he has to figure out the length of the staff, because it was wrong at first, and then he's like, whoa, I gotta.
And I love that it's wrong, because Tote only grabbed one half of it, and it's side. Like burned onto his hand. Oh, that's such a cool detail.
It's so good when he's like, "Are you sure the one that you saw only has writing on one side?" It's so genius. Well, he got it wrong. We're right.
That's so good. I didn't even catch that. Oh my God. Oh, I gotta watch this movie like now when we're done recording. Because I will admit I didn't rewatch them for this recording, so I'm coming in pure nostalgia. But I don't know. I think that my favorite puzzle was the leap of faith or whatever the hell it's called, like the one right before going into the room with the knight, because it's just anticlimactic to an extent, but I think that's the best part of it. It's just like you don't really have to do anything. You just have to trust,
have faith,
have a leap of faith.
Have to trust in yourself, and it goes back to like what we were saying at the beginning, and it's going back to also what the Bad Batch is going through right now. It's just like it's not about the treasure that you seek outside of yourself. It's about that treasure within yourself, and I think that's kind of like the important thing of like that scene specifically. It's just like Indy's not doing it for the Grail; he's doing it for himself. And I don't know. It's stupid, but it's so great. I don't know. I love it so much. Controversial question here, Alex. Do you think? Because this is online, I have to do it. Do you think that Raiders of the Lost Ark, if Indy hadn't been part of that movie, would have had the same ending?
What do you mean?
Because I've seen some people opine.
Yeah. Like, and it was on
the Indy doesn't affect the plot.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I've done an entire video on this.
Oh, okay. Go watch that video, guys, and go watch it.
I think it was my first Indiana Jones didn't affect the plot, or my first Indiana Jones explained video about how people always say he didn't do anything, which I believe he led them to Marion. Off the top of my head, I can't remember. I think I made 3 points of like, this is how he specifically affected the plot. But at the end of the day, like, you're watching movies wrong. Like, that's not that's not what this is about. Like, it's about the change the character goes through. The Indiana Jones movies are about Indiana Jones. And so I'm like,
right. I'm like,
100%. A, you're wrong. B, even if you believe it, like it doesn't matter.
I love it.
Yes, yeah. I mean, you're 100% right. You're 100%. It's one of those things that it's fun to make fun of things in that sense.
I don't even mind the argument really.
But people, but the problem is that people take it seriously. It's like, well, they'll just go to their grave.
Oh yeah, that's like, what bugs me.
And it's just like, I mean, sure, it's fun to make fun of it, being like, well, whatever. But yes, you're absolutely right. So seeing the point of the movie is not really that. It's it's the character himself. It's like with Last Jedi or whatever, when people are just like, well, it was just a long chase. And it's like, well, but what happened during the chase? It's just like, what did the characters go through, and like what was their character development, and like what happens with they're not. I think we've been desensitized to an extent as film viewers, just expecting like twist and plot narratives instead of saying like, okay, what are the characters going through, and like what's important to the people experiencing the events of the film. That like we're just entitled in that sense into like being spoiled into, well, the plot's more important to an extent than what's going on with the people that are going through that plot, which kind of skews how we're kind of seeing that narrative, which feeds into that whole Indiana Jones thing in Raiders.
Well, I think, Nadi, did you bring up that it was on Big Bang Theory?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that I remember seeing the people sent me the clips of that, and I was like, at the time, I think I was even kind of like struggling to think of ways that he affected the plot. But what bugs me about the clip is that all of a sudden they act like the movie's bad now. And it's like, did you have fun watching it? It's like, no, that doesn't make it a bad movie. It's like,
oh my God, I didn't even know that. And that's the thing. Like, I actually never, I never would have thought the whole like Indiana Jones doesn't affect the plot narrative if I hadn't read it online. Because it's like, well, it's because I'm not thinking about like, oh, well, the Nazis died because
I had never
regardless of Indy.
Yeah.
And like
until I saw it on Big Bang Theory, I was like, what?
And the fact that people are focusing on that, right?
And it had never occurred to me, and the million times that I've watched it, never occurred to me that Indy didn't affect the plot. It's called Indiana Jones.
Actually, it's called Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Raiders of the Lost Ark. Yeah, fine.
Except when you're wrong.
Okay. Okay, fine. I'm wrong.
It's only a rebrand now through Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. So stupid. I hate to do that. I'm sorry, but I love to do
it's
that
fine.
too.
It's fine.
Favorite things from each movie. Alex, let's start with you. What's your favorite thing about Raiders, and what's your favorite thing about Last Crusade?
Oh God. I love probably the opening sequence is maybe my favorite part, where it's just I didn't want to interrupt the podcast, but I've got mine right back there.
Yeah.
Like, just that it's the end of the last adventure, which is a very Star Wars thing to do as well. Like, we're picking up in the middle of this story where Princess Leia is being chased for doing something, and we kind of like have to catch up. And so we're seeing the end of Indy's last adventure. Again, he doesn't get the treasure. It introduces Belloc. All of the traps are super fun. Alfred Molina is there. Like, it's so
Doc
great.
Ock. Oh yeah. Yes.
Yep.
The boulder, like everything
It's
about
so,
it is
it's iconic.
Yeah.
It's iconic. But
So
somehow
weird. Everything.
so
Yeah.
weird. And then he comes in like in shadow. So like you see the silhouette of Indiana Jones like comes in through the vines. Oh, so good. Can you imagine if it had been what was it, Alex Selleck that was gonna allegedly
Tom
be
Selleck, yeah.
Tom Selleck, there we go. Sorry. That would not have been the same. It would not. I'm sorry. Like I'm a big Stash stan, but
Same.
I don't but somehow I don't see that happening with Indy. And
I like that George was just resistant on Harrison, because he was like, he was in my last 2 movies, and I don't want him to like be my De Niro, but here we are.
But but there's a reason why De Niro is Scorsese's De Niro. Nani, how about you? What's your favorite scene?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to agree with Alex. I remember I was watching it when I was rewatching it, and I just thought that's how you start a movie. That is a perfect way to start a film. That you get excited right off the bat. It's so good. You start to see what this character is all about, all the adventure type, and then suddenly you see him in the classroom, you know, actual archaeologist, the girl closing her eyes to love you in the eyelashes. I mean, it's so good.
Interesting. I have to be the dissenting voice. I mean, I do love that scene. Don't get me wrong, because I remember when I went to Disney World when I was 11 years old, and going to the Indiana Jones experience, and you see the boulder reenacted. I was just like, oh, it's
the last time
I was just like,
we were at
can
Disney
life be
World,
better?
We got one of our friends to be one of the people that got up on stage.
No!
And it was super cool.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
Shut up.
Super jealous.
Yes, because I thought as being an audience member, life couldn't get better. I was like, oh my God, that's Harrison Ford right there. But obviously it wasn't Harrison Ford, but my young mind thought it was. But I have to say it was the opening of Last Crusade, because one, we're seeing young Indy. So in my mind, it's just like, oh, he was young. I'm young too, so I can be an archaeologist. And it's like I don't like
and
studying.
We're talking about Raiders, not Last Crusade.
No, we're talking about either.
Oh, I thought it was just Raiders.
I thought it was just.
I mean, I think my answer would probably stand, but I love the opening to Last Crusade as well.
Yeah.
Well, now I have to reach up on my thing to just think about Raiders. Yeah, Raiders. It is the opening. It is the opening in Raiders, because I mean, yeah, I bought a replica of that thing for a reason. Because everything else in Raiders, it's iconic, but it's just like it doesn't. I love Raiders, but I don't think it's as quotable as Last Crusade. Like there isn't like any particular scene that I'm just like, yeah, you know, it's like maybe the scene where he kills like the guy with the gun because Harrison Ford was sick that day. But as overall, like there isn't like like these moments that's just like that's the quotable moment of it. Aside from the opening scene, I think I agree with everybody. And maybe it's controversial to say that Raiders is not as quotable, but I'm gonna.
I think you're right. I think it's more about the action set pieces because it just very quickly moves from one to the next.
Yeah,
which is fine.
Yeah.
It's not a net negative.
Last Crusade is the more thoughtful movie.
So let's go to that. What's your favorite then? Not opening scene, because obviously I'm really narrowing it down. That's leading the witness, Your Honor. What's your favorite scene in The Last Crusade?
It's probably the opposite, like the last going through all of the traps, getting the Grail, Donovan. I mean, that's like a long ass scene to choose, but that whole sequence from them getting into the, what do they call it? The Temple of the Crescent Moon, or is it just the Canyon of the Crescent Moon?
Yes.
Just getting into that final location and everything that happens in it. But the opening is also fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's funny that when Solo was coming out, I was kind of like, I don't really want a greatest hits of like, this is how Han met Chewie and how he got the blaster and how he got the Falcon. And then when he did the Kessel Run, that's exactly what the movie did. And I enjoyed it. But they did it in Last Crusade in like 10 minutes. Like, here's how he got his fear of snakes. Here's the first.
The scar,
like, the scar even.
Yeah.
But okay,
the origin story for everything all the way through the.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong, but I'm gonna push back.
Oh no, I'm not. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm saying I love it. Like
I'm gonna push back.
It's super fun. I accept your push.
Because again, I don't want to talk about. So we were talking about Indiana Jones, but I think the difference between Solo and Indiana Jones was that. With Indiana Jones, it was kind of like it was literally, what you said, the greatest hits in the prologue. Mm-hmm. It's like, this is it. And with Solo, it's just like, this is the movie. And it's like, okay, well, I'm actually not learning really anything about the character that I didn't already know. Yeah. I'm not saying I don't like Solo. I think it's a perfectly fine film. It's serviceable. I
think that's a great point, is that it's so contained and it's so fun and fast that And you, especially back then, you weren't expecting that. It's like, with Han and Solo, like it's been 40 years, so we've known about all this stuff for a long time, and we were like, "Is this just going to be a checklist?" And it was very fun. It was a very fun checklist.
It was a fun checklist, yes. But like, I think so. I don't want to talk about Solo, but I will. And I think Solo would have been serviced better if it had been like, okay, let's see things about Han that we actually don't know about, and it'll further it, and then like it actually makes sense to make a sequel to it. And I think Solo would have been great as a duology, because in the first part of the film is Han as a scum rat, in Corellia, and then being part of the Imperial Navy and all that stuff, and like we're seeing what he had to go through with the Empire and all of that. And then the second movie is about like, okay, he gets the Falcon, he meets Chewie, and like does the scoundrel stuff, and then you see a lot that him that we haven't seen before, instead of, like you said, checklist. Well,
the things we already knew.
He has to do this, then he does that, and then that, and then also in his first adventure, he does the 12 parsec stuff, and it's just like, okay, well, then which kind of makes sense, I guess, for Hound in a way that his best moments were all in one time, and he's just coasting off of that memory. But
I do love I think they do a good job in that movie of when he tries to brag to that one dude. He's like, I just did the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs, and the guy just like rolls his eyes and walks away. Like no one cares. It's a big deal to Han, but no one else.
And and Force Awakens, 14, 12. He's still like he's in his 80s and he's still coasting on it. Anyway, I'm sorry, I got distracted. But in Last Crusade, it's a snippet, but then the majority of the 3/4 of not even 3/4, like more than that, 80% of the movie is actually like new stuff about developing Indy's character, especially with his thing with Henry Jones Sr. Nani, what's your favorite part?
That's hard to tell. I mean, I love the beginning. There's so many scenes in The Last Crusade that are just so great, but for some reason I've always really loved when they find the catacombs, like in Venice.
Right.
I love the puzzle, finding the night, the rats, the fire, everything. I just think it's so much fun. Even from the beginning, it's so campy when they're breaking, the ground on the library, and the one librarian is like,
yes, X marks the spot. That's my favorite part. Like, that's what I was going to say. Yeah.
And when he had started, he was like, X never marks the spot. And then it's like, oh, well, I just totally punked myself. So I love it.
It's so good. It's so stupid. It's good. I love it so much. I mean, it's not stupid. I'm saying it's stupid because whatever.
It's kind of stupid, great. But in a good way. Like,
exactly. Because it's exactly like Last Crusade. Like has so many of those little moments, especially like the beginning. Because it's like the prologue. He gets the hat, all that stuff, and then a little establishing moment of like his contentious relationship with his father. It's like in Greek, and then he has to count in Greek, and then nothing happens. And it's like, okay, well, you lost this time, but keep fighting. And then he gets the hat, bam, jump cut into the future with the Cross of Coronado, was it?
Mm-hmm.
And the ship, and so good. It's just perfect. It's such a perfect opening to just establish Indiana Jones as a character and further like who he is. It's like, that belongs in a museum. So do you. It's like, so
I like
adorable.
it's been like 2 years since Raiders, and now he's ancient. Like,
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the timeline, it's like, you're too old to do this now. And then, like,
Yeah.
cut to Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and now Dial of
Yeah.
Destiny.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Perfect. I wouldn't have it any other way. It's just amazing. But yeah, now like I was also thinking of like that scene of the I was gonna say hotel for some reason, of the library with the giant goddamn X, and being like, well, X marks the spot. Especially like how nonchalantly he says it.
Yeah.
It's perfect delivery. It's the most Harrison Ford way to say something. Just like I love Harrison Ford so much, especially like in his old age, with how bored he is with life. It's wonderful. And you could kind of see like that, like the contemporary Harrison Ford a little bit in Last Crusade in that delivery. She's like, oh, X marks the spot.
Molly and I, we went to Venice in 2018, and the first thing that we did after getting over our jet lag was, I was like, we're going to that church.
Awesome.
Oh my
Awesome.
God. And does it actually have the?
Oh no, it's not a library, it's a church. So we just were outside.
Oh, it is a
I
church.
tried to stand where they come out of the sewers.
So that's a set then, like the whole thing with the interior. Damn it! I was hoping. It's like, oh,
For the X on the floor.
I was hoping for that, but that's still cool. Don't get me
It's
wrong.
amazing. That is super cool.
Venice. One day, if we ever open a Patreon, guys, please submit to the Patreon so that Nani and I can go to Venice, so we can do the picture in front of the church. But yeah, Last Crusade like has a lot of those moments too, where it's just like, I just did a post on the Twitter, even though Twitter's broken right now because we can't do 2-factor authentication. Where it's just like the whole Charlemagne thing, which is just like he's just with the umbrella and just like opening like, doing that ridiculous things. Like, I just remember my Charlemagne, whatever, and it's like, that's what? It's like, what is this? It doesn't even make sense because. And that's why it works so beautifully, because it plays against the type, right, of like what Indiana Jones is supposed to be. That he's like Indy's foil in a positive way, right? Sean Connery. That's just like memorable. What's your favorite Sean Connery moment?
It's probably the whole plane sequence. First, when he shoots the tail off of their own plane, and he's like,
okay,
they got us. And then they crash land.
Yeah.
And he's like, those men are trying to kill us. Like, I know, Dad.
Oh my God, you're absolutely right. That's so good. It's just like it's just especially like how it's shot, right? Because he literally does it himself, and you can see, and then it just cuts to his face being like, oh, well,
they got us.
Junior, they got us. Can you land this plane? Fly? Yes. Land? No.
Highly quotable, yeah.
Oh my, exactly.
Amazing.
Nani, how about you? What's your favorite?
I think I love when they're still in the Nazi castle, and when they're tied together, and Elsa's like saying goodbye, like, I will never forget like our moments together, and Sean Connery's like, well, yes, it was wonderful.
Yes.
And then
I totally forgot about that. The sex jokes are incredible.
And that whole sequence is great too.
Yes, it was pretty incredible. Yes.
And here, use the lighter, try to get us out, and then he just drops it, and everything goes up. The floor's on fire. Wait, the chair is also on fire. Everything's
also
on
the
fire.
chair. Him trying to blow it out, and it just like spreads.
Oh my God. No, but that's good, because then like it has like that hilarious, but still poignant moment where it's just like when they're talking about like when Indy realizes that, his father had carnal relationships with the same woman, and then like he's just like that, it's just like calling him out on it, and then like Henry Jones is just like, well, I'm just assuming that's the next man, and then I was the next man.
But I mean, the whole thing
Eskimo brothers, for everyone that knows the term.
And it was so hilarious because the whole time Henry's like, well, I didn't trust her. Why did you trust her? Are you an idiot or something? I was sleeping with her, but I wasn't going to trust her.
Right.
She's not
She talks in her sleep.
Exactly. Oh my God. How did you know? Well, she talks in her sleep. As if that's obvious. I gotta fact check that now. It's just like it's when Inglorious Bastards, the whole like 3, how do you count with your fingers thing. I actually confirmed that. I have a coworker. He's from Germany, and one day I'm just like, dude, I hate to do this, but I just need to, like, for my peace of mind. This has been weighing on me for years. Do you guys count like this? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, perfect. Okay. Now I can maintain Inglorious Bastards as my top Tarantino film now, because it's true. It's the moment, the iconic moment in the bar is actually true. But yeah, like I don't know, like it's so quotable. I don't know. I love it. But we've been rambling on with Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and The Last Crusade. Alex, I don't know if you had like any like closing thoughts before, because I mean I could. As you can tell, I'm unhinged today with these films because I'm really having a fun time and really enjoying these really fun films. But all podcasts must have an end. I don't know if you had like any like thoughts to kind of wrap up. Any thoughts about Raiders and Last Crusade that you'd like to give us with before we have like our spicy episode about Temple and Kingdom?
No, I think we covered everything. I also did not rewatch them for this, but I'm like, I got the 4Ks and I haven't popped them in yet, and I need to do a rewatch of all 4 before.
Where are they streaming? Actually,
Paramount Plus, I think. Oh yeah,
Disney. Buy them
on Amazon Prime too. Yeah,
buy them. Disney, just buy them.
I know. I'm surprised but like I know Paramount made them, so
yeah,
it's like a weird situation.
It's like it's with the New Hope, where like Fox had the distribution rights, so.
Oh, do you mean just buy Paramount? Is that what you're telling Disney?
Why
not buy another one?
It's unethical, but at this point,
I
it's
want
just like
Indiana Jones on Disney Plus.
Exactly, just like with the Marvel stuff. It's like, hey, it's unethical for you to buy Fox, but do it so I can get the X-Men. I'm selfish. I against monopolies until it serves my interests. Sorry, guys. Nani, how about you? What's your closing thoughts on the thing?
No, they're so great. I had forgotten some of the moments because, like I was telling you, sometimes it's on TV and I just let it go. But usually, in Raiders, it always starts when they're running around the streets of Cairo, which is amazing. But I almost always catch it from that point on, so I hadn't seen the beginning in forever. And for Last Crusade, I would always catch it in that last trial, those last trials, like all the time. So I hadn't seen the beginning in a really long time either. And they're exactly as fun as I remember, and they deserve getting rewatched. And yeah, I only watched those 2. I have to rewatch Temple and Kingdom as well and see how Kingdom has aged too, because I don't think I've seen that one very many times.
I hate Temple. I hate Temple. I'm sorry. No, I have one more actually, Alex, because I know you have like a really fun question that you ask everyone on your interviews on your channel. So I'm gonna ask it to you.
Yeah, this is a good one.
What's your favorite background minor character from Indiana Jones?
If we're just going, I don't think Sala is background enough.
No, not in Last Crusade.
He's like Katanga. Katanga's great.
Oh,
who the hell's Katanga?
He's
the pirate in Raiders that helps them.
Okay.
He like barely has any screen time, but he has a real presence. I like that he does his best to try to save Marion. Trying to think of Fedora is also great from the start of Last Crusade. Again, just it's really cool to show that reveal of like, oh, there's Indy, and then he turns around and you're like, that's not Indy. But then he passes the hat on. And I like that his name is just Fedora.
It's a powerful name.
It's a powerful name.
Nani, how about you?
I don't know, actually. I'm trying to think about. I'm terrible at this one.
It was tough because it's not like Star Wars.
I didn't prepare anybody for this. I just came up with it. Yeah. As you know, I'm unhinged today.
What's yours? Well, I think.
The guy that I have no idea who his name was, but it's basically the guy from the, oh my God, what's the guy from the Mummy that's just that has the tattoos like under his eyes?
The one in Last Crusade,
my soul is ready.
My
soul is ready. How about yours? That guy. dope. It's ready to go
actually,
down.
I like the guy with the monkey and the eye patch. And
screw that guy. He wanted to screw that guy. Because of him, the monkey died. You don't kill monkeys in this house.
It's a Nazi monkey, though.
It's a Nazi monkey.
Yeah, it is.
Actually, that's a duplicitous monkey. Yeah. That's like screw that monkey.
Yeah. The monkey
he seems nice and shit, but like, no, but he's got those poison dates. No, screw that monkey.
I really like the guy in that scene who tells Indy and Sala the measurements, where he's like, look.
Oh yeah, that one's really good. I like that one too. Look, I explain.
What's interesting that most of the people I think of, I'm like, they don't have names. This isn't Star Wars, where everyone has a background history.
It's Guy.
Yeah.
Like, and I have a hard time describing them without being culturally insensitive. Guy type of thing.
Guy.
But it's fine. It's part of it. It's George Lucas's fault, not ours. Great. Oh my God, that was good. I'm glad I asked that question because that was fun. Now I need to rewatch the movie anyway, because
they're fun.
It was a good discussion.
They're just fun.
It's good. It's good. But anyway, before I keep rambling on here, I'm rambling because I'm having a good time. So thank you so much, Alex, for joining us because it's been so good. Again, there's so much to talk about Raiders and Last Crusade that we could not fit it into a reasonably sized podcast episode. So thank you for spending this whole time with us. Obviously, we're gonna. As we mentioned in the beginning, we're going to do a duology. So we're going to be talking about Temple and Last Crusade and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull a little further down the line.
Even though you mentioned them 20 times through the podcast, Nani, you kept saying we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
We'll get to it.
Watch out. We'll get to it. Yes, I have feelings. Okay, here's the thing. Okay. Here's the thing. I have a coworker who's about to. He's my work husband, right? At work, and he's 10 years older than I. He has the worst takes, and every time we talk about Indiana Jones, it's always a fight because his top movie is Temple of Doom, and I'm triggered every time because at work I always fight with him, and he sits next to me, so we're always fighting about Temple of Doom because he thinks it's the best one, and it's like, no, you're whatever. So it's a triggering thing for me.
You need to get that, out of your system.
Yes, and now he's getting married, so now I'm gonna lose him. So it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing that's going. It's a very emotional thing that I'm going through. I need therapy. That's ultimately what it boils down to. But we'll talk about it, and I'll get through all the emotions that I have about Temple of Doom. But anyway, that's it. We'll have Alex, and he'll help me go through it.
Cope.
if I don't scare you off from this chat. But anyway, thank you so much, Alex, for joining us. Tell us what's going on with Star Wars Explained. I know there's a lot of content coming out, so you're doing your live reviews for the Bad Batch. Obviously, I'm probably gonna do some of the live reviews for Mandalorian, this little show that's coming out. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you have planned for the future?
Yeah, I mean, the next few months are all tied up with Mandalorian starts on March 1st. So we'll be doing reviews and videos for all of those. We're still covering the Bad Batch until it finishes at the end of March. And then we have Star Wars Celebration we're going out to London for. When Mando ends, we'll be doing coverage for Star Wars Jedi Survivor. And that might take us all the way to the Dial of Destiny. I don't know.
Oh my God.
and I'll be doing Indiana Jones videos in the lead up to that. So,
good.
Awesome.
Good. We need more Indy.
Back when it was supposed to come out, last year, I did a bunch of Indiana Jones videos and then they delayed it. I was going to do a whole Indy week. So I've had videos done for a year and a half. I pushed them to this year.
That's great. You're ready to go. Ready to go. It's just less work for you. You can take a small vacation that week. Great. And we're definitely looking forward to that. Celebration will be there. So we can definitely hang out there, do some karaoke.
Oh yeah.
So very, very, very excited for what the future holds. And we'll be talking about Temple of Doom and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull soon-ish. And then when does Dial of Destiny come out? Actually,
June 30th.
June 30th, I think.
Okay, we got some time. Lucasfilm, just invite us. Just invite us. Invite us. Invite us. I'm not begging, but I am. Anyway, Nani, control me, please. Take this off my hands.
We are done for today. We love Indiana Jones. If you haven't watched them, watch them. And if you haven't watched them in a while, watch them again. They're fun. They're great. This was a great conversation. Alex, thank you so much for joining us. I apologize for Goose because he is clearly unhinged today. But it's still fun.
I am. But in a good way,
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's good.
yeah.
We will continue doing our Bad Batch reviews. Mando is also coming out soon, so we'll be talking about those as well. And just remember, like, subscribe. We are Triad of the Force. You can find us anywhere that podcast can be found. And until next time, may the Force be with you.